He left her with nothing but a note on the counter and a suitcase filled with bills he didn't finish paying. He called her a nobody, a burden, and said he'd found someone who could keep up with him. What he didn't know was that she already owned the penthouse his mistress was living in and the luxury car they drove away in, leased by a company she controlled. He walked out of their home thinking he won, but the woman he left behind was a billionaire in disguise, and what she did next would turn his life and reputation into ashes. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Her name is Lauren Fields. To the outside world, she looked like someone who life had quietly passed by. She wore thrift store cardigans, packed her own lunches in reusable containers, and drove a 2008 Toyota Corolla that wheezed at every stop sign. Her hair was always tied back, her nails always bare, and she spoke with the kind of gentle restraint you only find in people used to being talked over. She wasn't loud, she didn't wear flashy things, and she never posted anything personal online. Most of her neighbors thought she was a school teacher. A few assumed she was unemployed. But she smiled at everyone, picked up after her dog, paid her rent early every month, and kept to herself. For 12 years, she shared a life with her husband, Craig. He worked in commercial real estate. Nice suits, shiny shoes, that sharp cologne scent that lingers longer than it should. He loved being seen, and he loved being admired. But over time, admiration wasn't enough. He wanted affirmation, attention, devotion. And when Lauren didn't clap loud enough for his successes, or get jealous enough when he went out late, he took that as indifference, as disrespect. He said she lacked ambition, that she was too plain, too simple, too invisible. He started working late, then disappearing on weekends. And when she asked if something was wrong, he'd flash a tired smile and tell her she was imagining things, that he was doing it all for them, that she just didn't understand what pressure looked like. The truth is, she understood it more than he ever could. Because for all the things Craig thought he knew about Lauren, her habits, her weaknesses, her supposed limitations, there was one thing he never stopped to consider, one thing he never even bothered to question. That maybe, just maybe, Lauren Fields was never the woman he assumed she was. Maybe the modest apartment and the hand-me-down life weren't reflections of her worth, but of her calculation. And when Craig finally made his grand exit with his new girlfriend, his smug sense of superiority, and the condo she picked out, it should have been the start of Lauren's unraveling. Instead, it was the beginning of his. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about power, perception, and a plan 15 years in the making. Because Lauren Fields wasn't just hiding a fortune, she was hiding the truth about who she really was. For 12 years, Craig thought he had her figured out, thought she was lucky to have him, thought she needed him to survive. But who was Lauren, really? Why did she choose to live like someone scraping by when she had more wealth than most CEOs could dream of? Why did she quietly clip coupons when she could have bought the entire strip mall? And when Craig finally showed his true colors, when he humiliated her, left her, and paraded around town with someone younger, louder, richer looking, why didn't Lauren stop him? Why didn't she scream, or beg, or fight? That's the real mystery. Because beneath every restrained smile, behind every modest dress and polite nod, Lauren Fields was building something massive, something unstoppable. And when the mask finally came off, the world wouldn't be ready. Not for who she really was, not for what she'd already done, and certainly not for what she was about to do next. Lauren Fields clipped coupons, wore thrifted clothes, packed lunch for her husband every morning, turkey on whole wheat, no mayo, cut diagonally because that's how Craig liked it. She kept a modest kitchen, reused wrapping paper, and never asked for gifts. Birthdays were marked with handwritten cards, anniversaries with quiet dinners cooked at home. To anyone looking in, she was the image of a devoted wife who simply didn't expect much. But what no one knew was, she didn't need to expect anything from anyone. Because the truth is, Lauren Fields wasn't living modestly out of necessity. She was hiding something beneath the surface, something worth billions. The facade began years before Craig Weston ever knew her. While he was out charming clients and flexing his credentials as a top-producing agent, Lauren was laying the groundwork for something far bigger. But Craig didn't ask questions. He never really listened. He assumed her quietness was passivity, that her plain style meant she lacked depth. He mistook her silence for submission, and when the cracks in their marriage began to show, he didn't see a partner he could lean on. He saw someone holding him back. He said she wasn't exciting, said she had no fire, that she was comfortable being small. And in Lauren's world, that kind of arrogance wasn't new. It was just louder this time. Craig Weston was 48, aging out of the spotlight he thought he deserved. He started working later, dressing flashier, spending more time at rooftop lounges with younger colleagues who laughed too hard at his jokes. And then came Alyssa Kane, 30, ambitious, the owner of a luxury boutique uptown. She had the voice of someone used to being noticed, and the wardrobe to match. When she entered a room, heads turned. And when she looked at Craig, she made him feel 20 years younger. Their affair wasn't subtle. Lauren knew. Everyone knew. But she didn't confront him, didn't beg him to stay. She simply kept packing his lunch, folding his shirts, and nodding politely when he claimed he was just working late. Because Lauren wasn't focused on the noise. She was focused on the clock. She had waited years, built structures, businesses, and identities so far removed from Craig's understanding that he couldn't see them even if they were right in front of him. And he was right about one thing. Lauren had no fire. Because fire burns quickly. Lauren had patience, and patience swallows empires. But the moment Craig called her worthless, Lauren knew it was time. Craig Weston didn't leave like a man haunted by guilt. He left like someone walking away from a bad investment. One morning, he simply stopped coming home. A week later, Lauren received the divorce papers, served not at her house but at her office, in front of her staff, while she was leading a meeting on donor transparency. The man who once said she was his rock had reduced her to a formality, a forgotten signature on a legal document he was eager to erase. And as if the public embarrassment wasn't enough, the next blow came swiftly. Alyssa Kane, with her curated smile and attention-hungry flair, posted a photo of herself and Craig in Miami, wrapped in each other, champagne in hand, with a caption that read, "Finally living life, with the man I deserve." The tabloids feasted. Power couple alert. Real estate royalty. From housewife to high-rise. Strangers who didn't know Lauren's name were already forming opinions about her, calling her boring, saying Craig had upgraded. But Lauren didn't react. She didn't post. She didn't call. She didn't even respond to the media requests that followed. She simply went quiet. Deliberately quiet. Because while Craig was basking in attention and Alyssa was posing in borrowed jewelry, Lauren was making calls. Discreet, powerful ones. She didn't liquidate anything, didn't sell shares, didn't move homes. But behind the curtain, the gears were shifting. A quiet transfer of legal rights here, a boardroom signature there. Nothing flashy, nothing public, but everything significant. What Craig didn't know, what he never thought to question, was that the boutique Alyssa had proudly opened downtown? Lauren owned the building, and not just the bricks and mortar. She owned 51% of the business entity holding its lease. She had helped finance it years ago through a silent holding group. When Alyssa first opened her doors, Lauren was already collecting her rent. And Craig's new executive job? The sleek corner office, the executive parking space, the congratulatory posts. The startup he joined had been seeded by a venture fund Lauren had established before they were even married. She didn't run it anymore, but her signature still sat on the foundational charter, and her capital still flowed through its veins. His new freedom wasn't just tainted, it was built entirely on her money. Every wine they toasted, every dinner they bragged about, every dollar he spent trying to impress the world, it all came from her. Quietly, invisibly, unknowingly. The world thought she was defeated. that she'd been replaced by someone younger, louder, more valuable. But Lauren, she was only getting started. And then, she made her first real move. Craig Weston thought he was climbing, thought every step he took with Alyssa was leading him to some new chapter of power, luxury, and control. But in reality, he was standing on quicksand. Quicksand built, brick, by the very woman he left behind. At first, it was subtle. A delayed payment from a client. A bounced bonus that never hit his account. Then, things began unraveling quickly. Notices arrived at the condo he shared with Alyssa. Foreclosure warnings, outstanding tax liens, flagged transactions tied to shell corporations no one could trace. His credit lines began to shrink, not because of overspending, but because they were being quietly deconstructed from the top. The luxury SUV he flaunted in Instagram photos, repossessed, right in front of Alyssa's boutique in broad daylight. He shouted, he threatened, he blamed, but no one listened, no one cared, because his name had never truly been on any of it. He filed lawsuits, hired lawyers, demanded audits, but every legal door he knocked on slammed shut. His name wasn't on the original contracts, the holding companies were impenetrable, and the one signature that seemed to appear everywhere, the one tying it all together, was Lauren Fields. Not in big bold letters, but in footnotes, in trusts, in founder clauses buried 3 levels deep. The empire she built had always been hidden, but now that it was collapsing on him, it was impossible to ignore. And yet, Lauren never said a word. She still walked her dog at 6 a.m., still waved to the same neighbors, still packed her lunch in the same container. People around her began to whisper, some with awe, some with confusion, others with fear. Why didn't she stop him before it all got this far? Why let him drag her name through the mud only to burn him from behind the curtain? Why live like she had nothing when she'd had everything the whole time? But Lauren had her reasons. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. And what no one understood, what Craig never took the time to learn, was that Lauren Fields had never wanted to be seen. She had wanted to be underestimated, and in Craig's arrogance, she got exactly that. Lauren Fields wasn't just rich. She was the hidden force behind some of the most powerful real estate investments in the city. Long before Craig Weston ever stepped into her life, she had already made her mark. At 27, she quietly launched 3 shell companies, each designed to operate independently, with separate boards, legal structures, and public faces. By 30, she had sold her first tech startup for $80 million, structuring the deal in a way that her name never appeared in headlines, press releases, or investor calls. Everything she built, every piece of her empire, was designed to be invisible, anonymous, untraceable, and not because she craved secrecy for the thrill of it, but because she needed protection. Years before Craig, before the modest house and packed lunches, Lauren had learned the hardest lesson a woman could. The more people know you have, the more they want from you. And sometimes, they'll take it all. As a teenager, she watched her mother lose everything in a bitter divorce, watched lawyers pick apart their lives like vultures circling a corpse. Assets frozen, friends gone, trust shattered. That memory carved something into Lauren, something permanent. She promised herself she would never be that exposed again. So she built her wealth like a fortress with no front gate, no social media, no interviews, no luxury cars with her name on the title. Just silence, precision, and an unwavering belief that staying hidden was the safest way to hold power. And that's what made Craig's betrayal sting in a way no lawyer or lawsuit ever could. Because the betrayal wasn't just about him leaving. It wasn't even about Alyssa. It was about the years they shared, the birthdays, the holidays, the private jokes, and how none of it meant enough for him to look deeper, for him to see her, really see her. He slept beside her for over a decade, touched her hands, heard her voice, lived in the warmth of her loyalty, and still believed she was ordinary, still believed she needed him more than he needed her. But Lauren didn't need anyone. What she needed was the space to choose. And now, with Craig stripped of everything he thought he'd earned, and the world watching without knowing what they were truly seeing, Lauren stood exactly where she had always planned to be. Alone, untouchable, and finally, visible. Lauren Field's retaliation wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It wasn't plastered across tabloids or shouted from podiums. It was quiet, calculated, and complete. Because it was never about revenge. It was about revelation. About peeling back the illusion of power that Craig Weston thought he held, and showing the world what was true all along. That every ounce of success he thought he built was built on her. And as the last of the threads unraveled, it wasn't Lauren who raised her voice. It was the silence that followed his collapse that spoke the loudest. Alyssa Kane's boutique shuttered within weeks. Suppliers pulled out, lease revoked, credit destroyed. The fashion world moved on without her. There was no scandal, no courtroom battle, just a quiet vanishing, the kind of disappearance that no one warns you about because no one cares to. And Craig? He ended up in court more than he ended up in meetings. Legal debt stacked. Former clients distanced themselves. His accounts were frozen and his reputation erased. He had no idea how it all fell apart, only that every move he made was met with resistance. Every opportunity blocked. Every door slammed shut. And Lauren? She didn't gloat. She didn't make statements or issue denials. She simply continued walking the same neighborhood path she always had. Dog leash in one hand, coffee in the other. But behind closed doors, she was still building, still giving. And in the final twist of all twists, she signed over her latest charitable foundation, a multi-million-dollar initiative dedicated to girls' education and financial literacy, under the name of Alyssa Kane. Not as a slight, not as a mockery, but as a reminder. That names fade, but actions echo. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She simply took everything back that was already hers. And the world? What do you think? Was Lauren Field's right to stay silent all these years? To let Craig believe he held the power, even as she quietly built the floor beneath his every step? Or should she have told him the truth the moment he crossed the line? When he chose someone else? When he tried to erase her worth with a signature and a suitcase? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if you thought this was shocking, wait until you hear the story of the woman who faked her own death to expose a marriage full of secrets. Subscribe so you don't miss it.